Nakikita po ba ng lahat?
Yes po.
Bali, yung reporting po namin, ang introduction ay si Maso John Leonard S. And may recording po siya na paparinig ko sa inyo. Since kasi yung signal sa kanila mahina. So, ganito na lang po yung ginawa namin. Parang hindi po narinig ano. Tama po ba?
Good day, sir, and good day, classmate. My name is John Leonard Maso, and first of all is let us pray. Lord, maraming salamat po sa binibigay niyo pong kalakasan ng katawan na ginagamit namin sa pang-araw-araw. Lord, patawarin niyo po kami sa aming mga nagagawang kasalanan, malaki man po malit, hayag man po lihim, sana Panginoon, mapatawad niyo kami. Lord, sana po dito po sa aming pag-aaral po nito, marami po kami matutunan at kaya na Lord din po ang bahala po sa amin sa dadaan pa pong mga araw. Amen. At ang aking mga kagrupong apala po dito ay si Hangana Jessa, Adoyo Maria Amor, Malbog Rizalin, Historilio Gister, Loro John Darrell, Mutol John Mart,
Okay, good morning everyone. Ang topic ko is Aristotle. So, bigyan ko lang kayo ng brief history about Aristotle. Kung sino siya, ganun. Aristotle was one of the greatest philosophers who ever lived and first genuine scientist in history. He made pioneering contributions to all fields of philosophy and science. He invented the field of formal logic and he identified the various scientific disciplines and explored their relationship to each other. He first used the term ethics to name a field of study developed by his predecessors Socrates and Plato. If you say predecessors, sila yung mga person who held a good job or office before the current holder. Meaning, after ni Aristotle, sila yung mga nag-develop kung anong idea na meron si Aristotle. Yan. And the meaning of ethics is the attempt to offer a rational response to the question of how humans should best live. The two related but separate fields of study, which she considered to be the best type of community, are ethics and politics. Ethics examine the good of the individual, while politics examines the good of the city-state. What is Aristotle's theory of ethics? The moral theory of Aristotle, like that of Plato, focuses on virtue, recommending the virtuous way of life by its relation to happiness. As Aristotle argues in Book 2 of Nicomachean Ethics, the man who possesses character excellence will tend to do the right thing at the right time and in the right way. Ang examples ng character excellence or virtue are bravery, correct regulation of one's bodily appetites. So, acting bravely and acting temperately are examples of excellent activities. Aristotle emphasized that virtue is practical and that the purpose of ethics is to become good, not merely to know. Aristotle also claims that the right course of action depends upon the details of a particular situation rather than being generated merely by applying a law. Katulad ng ibang entities, Aristotle regards excellent activity as pleasurable for the man of virtue. For example, katulad ng ibang entities, Aristotle regards excellent activity as pleasurable for the man of virtue. For example, Aristotle thinks that the man whose appetites are in the correct order actually takes pleasure in acting moderately. Ibig sabihin, ang tao na ang mga gusto ay nasa tamang pagkakasunod-sunod ay talagang nasisiyahan sa paggilos ng katamtaman. Eudaimonia, a Greek word often translated as well-being or human flourishing. Next reporter po is Anggana Jessa S. and the Estrella Jester. I-report po nila yung telos. Jessa po.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Now I will discuss the telos by Aristotle. The studies concerning Aristotle is all about. First, ay yung sunod na slide po. Telos like purpose or goal or final ends. According to Aristotle, everything has a purpose or final ends. If we want to understand what something is, it must be understood in terms of what ends, which can be discovered through careful study. Yung kay Aristotle daw po is, sinasabi dito yung final ends. So yung telos daw po, ito po yung pinaka-final ends na kung saan siya yung outcome o yung result ng isang bagay. Tulad example natin, may mga pangarap tayo sa buhay or goals na gusto maabot. Yung, kunyari, ako tulad ko, mag-aaral. Nag-aaral ako ng mabuti para ma-achieve ko yung pangarap ko. Yun yung tinatawag na final ends, yung result ng ating pinaghihirapan. Then, yung according to Aristotle, everything has a purpose. Ayun, dun pa ate, hindi pa dun. According to purpose, everything has a final end. Sinasabi ni Aristotle dito na lahat daw ng bagay ay may layunin ng huling wakas. It means lahat ng bagay na ginagawa natin is meron tayong purpose or meron tayong goal na gusto maabot sa pagdating ng araw. At kung nais nating maunawaan kung ano ang isang bagay, dapat itong maunawaan sa mga tuntunin na kung ano ang katapusan ng natutuklasan natin sa pamamagitan ng masusing pag-aaral. Sunod is teleological ethics. Teleological ethics from Greek telos, ends, logos, science. Theory of morality that derives duty of moral obligation from what is good or desirable as an end to be achieved. Also known as consequentialist ethics, it is opposed to the deontological ethics from the Greek deon, duty, which hold that the basic standards for the action being morally right are independent of the goods of evil generated. Ang teleological ethics rather, ay tinatawag din natin na consequentialist ethics na sinasabi na oppose or contradict sa deontological ethics dahil ang consequentialist ethics is a doctrine that action should be judged right or wrong on the basis of their consequences. Ang nagbe-base yung judgment sa pamamagitan ng consequences ng ating action, kaibahan sa deontological ethics na yung morality of an action should be based on whether the action itself is right or wrong under the series of rules. Ang deontological ethics din daw po is from the Greek deon na which means is duty. Sinasabi din po dito na which hold that the basic standards from the action being morally right are independent on the good of evil generated. Pinaniniwalaan din na ang mga pangunahing pamantayan para sa isang aksyon ay tama sa moral na naka-independ sa kabutihan o kasamaan na binubuo. For the some details of Telos, here is just a history for the report. Thank you po.
Yeah. No, sir. In ethical theory, each human action is taken to be directed towards some telos, and practical deliberation involves specifying the concrete steps needed to attain that telos. An agent life as a whole can also be understood as aimed at the attainment of the agent overall telos, are in the sense of their final end or summon bonum, highest good, generally identified in antiquity as happiness, rebel, ancient ethical theories, and distinguished primarily, primarily by the rebel specification of the end. Sa sa natural science, according to Aristotle, ang kilos ng isang miyembro ng species na kukumpleto at perpektong estado ng intensity na iyon kung saan maaari itong magparami sa sarili nito kaya maabot ng mga insekto ang kanilang kilos kapag sila ay nasa 7 gulang. Ang kilos ay isang organ o kapasidad na may kakayahang mag-function upang gampanan nito ang organismo sa kabuuan o kung ano ito para sa kapakanan. Dala ang tradisyon ni Anaxagoras at Plato, si Aristotle ay nakasentro sa kanyang siyentipikong metodolohiya sa paligid o kalikasan na ang ilang mga natural na phenomena ay nagaganap para sa kapakanan ng isang bagay na si Galen at ang stock ay, ay masigasig at pangalawa nito tinanggihan ito ni Epicurus. Next slide po. In the natural science of Aristotle, slide po, nawala. In the natural science of Aristotle, the telos of a member of a species is a complete and a perfect state of the entity, in which it can reproduce itself. The telos of an organ or capacity is the function it plays in the organism as a whole, or what it is for the sake of the telos of what the eye is seeing, carrying on the tradition of Anaxagoras and Plato. Aristotle centers his scientific methodology around the claim that there are ends in nature.
Miss Meldy po.
Yes po. So, good morning po.
My topic is Virtuous Habit by Aristotle. Aristotle defines moral virtue as a disposition to behave in a right manner and as a mean between extremes of deficiency and excess, which are vices. So Aristotle defined moral virtue as a disposition to behave in a right manner. He is stating that the right manner there is a state of character by which you or we can stand well in relation to our desires or dun sa ating mga kagustuhan, emotions, and choices, while he also gave a meaning on the vice versa of the virtue, which is the vices or yung ating pong mga bisyo. It is something extreme of deficiency and excess that can result of a moral failing or a bad habit. We learn moral virtue primarily through habit and practice rather than through reasoning and instruction. It means that we learn moral virtue through a way of habit and practice. Practice is something done intentionally. We decide to do it ourselves. If we keep doing it, it may become a habit. And a habit that is something we often do without ever deciding to do it is also expresses that we don't need to go through reasoning or an action of thinking in a logical or sensible way to learn or for us to have a moral virtue. There's no need someone to instruct us on what we should do, but it starts and learn through ourselves. So ibig sabihin po, natutunan daw natin ang pagkakaroon ng moral virtue through sa ginagawa natin or sa habit natin sa araw-araw at hindi na po natin kailangan na mag magkaroon pa or mag-go through pa po tayo sa isang reasoning or sa sensible way or hindi na po kailangan na i-instruct pa po tayo ng isang tao para matutunan yung moral virtue po. Aristotle believed that virtue as a habit requires an intentional choice when you begin. The intentional the intentional choice is when we choose to make decisions and take action on what is important to us. Being intentional means getting clear about on what we want to achieve. So ibig sabihin po na naniniwala daw po si Aristotle na nagiging habit natin ng virtue at nagre-requires po ito ng intentional choice or yung may choice po tayo na kung ano yung gusto nating gawin bago natin or bago tayo tumungo na magkaroon ng isang virtue. The habit of virtue is not yet developed, but over time, one becomes used to behaving virtuously, and after a while, one acts virtuously without needing to care volition. It says that a habit of virtue takes time to a person to develop it, while someone can also act virtuously without the use of volition or what we call as kusang loob. Next po. Slide. According to Aristotle, ethics is not atay yung pong sila. Ethics is not entirely a theoretical study for Aristotle. Unlike any intellectual capacity, virtues of character are dispositions to act in certain ways in response to similar situations. The habit of behaving in a certain way. Thus, good conduct arises from habit that in turn can only be acquired by repeating action and correction, making an ethics an intensely practical discipline. A locutation that Aristotle defined a virtuous habit, a good conduct arises from habits that can turn only be acquired by repeated action, or maaari nating makuha o matamo ang pagkakaroon ng good conduct base sa kung ano-ano yung paulit-ulit nating ginagawa. Next po. Virtue as a habit, that is once they are acquired, they become characteristic of a person. For example, a person who has developed the virtue of generosity is often referred to a generous person because he or she tends to be generous in all circumstances. From the example stated, if a person develop a virtue of generosity, he or she will be generous in all circumstances.
It may result for her or him to become that virtue as a habit, even though there are some circumstances that will occur in a certain situation, he or she will still choose to be a generous one. So, dun po sa example, ibig sabihin daw po na kung yung daw pong isang tao ay na-develop na yung bertud ng kanyang pagiging mapagbigay, hindi na po ang hadlang sa kanya na maging generous po sa lahat ng situation even though meron pong mga circumstances. At the heart of the virtue approach to ethics is the idea of community. A person's character traits are not developed in isolation, but within and by the communities to which he or she belongs. It means that the concept of community really play a big role of developing person's virtue. We cannot achieve to have a virtue without the affection from our community. It is simply that if a person is just staying inside a four corner of a room, he or she can't easily develop a virtue because of lack of connection to what community of he or he belongs. So, ibig sabihin po na talagang napakalaki pong affection sa atin ng ating community. Hindi po madali para sa atin na mag-develop yung virtue na meron tayo kung hindi po tayo nagkakaroon ng observation from our community. Hindi po natin nalalaman kung ano yung community na meron tayo kapag po hindi natin na nagkakaroon or hindi tayo lumalabas ng bahay. Yung kung tinatawag natin dun sa a person character traits are not developed in isolation. Sa totoo nga naman po na kung hindi naman po tayo lalabas, hindi madedevelop yung moral virtue or hindi po natin mapapractice or magiging habit ang pagkakaroon po ng virtue. Yun lang po. Thank you. Ate, wala na po yan.
Miss Adoyo po.
Good morning po. Our topic is happiness as virtue. Happiness is the only end or good that we desire for its own sake, and it is for the sake of happiness that we desire all other ends or goods. It is not a merely a pleasurable feeling of contentment or satisfaction, but an activity of human beings in particular. Only the rational principle is particular to human beings, and the human life, in order to be happy, must be lived in accordance with reason. Ibig sabihin, ang kaligayahan, ang tanging layunin o kabutihan na ating ninanais. So, bilang isang kabataan or estudyante, marami tayong mga layunin sa buhay na kailangan nating makamit. But sa but according to Aristotle, ang tunay na kaligayahan is yung paggawa mo ng tama at ng mabuti. At saka yung happiness ay hindi lang yung paggawa mo ng yung mga pagkamit mo ng pangarap mo. Halimbawa ay yung wealth, money, yung pagiging famous. Ang ibig sabihin ng tunay na happiness is yung gumawa ka ng something na mas nakalulugod sa bawat isa. Yung sabihin natin na makatwiran ang paggawa ng isang mabuti bagay sa ating kapwa. At saka, para makamit din natin yung tunay na kaligayahan is, kailangan nating i-practice yung mga virtues na ating napapag-aralan, which is ito yon. Yun lang po.
Next po. Mr. Torrente po.
Good morning po sa inyo. Happiness as virtue. Happiness can be understood as the moral goal of life or can
Saan nga daw mapunta eh?
nga wala.
Saan daw mapunta? Sabi sa work.
Ate pakian dun sa unang slide. Yan, okay.
Dalan daw siya ng Jollibee.
Happiness can be understood as a moral goal of life or can be unpredictable and something we create from ourselves and by ourselves. The idea of happiness was known as something we nurture on our own and is a state of emotion completing our everyday goals will soon bring us the happiness which seem to very important to most human in is what makes life worth living, but is not certain this conception of endomonia was common in ancient Greece, as is current today Aristotle as what thought was ideal activity for all those who wanted to live lives the fullest, be happy, and have purpose. Next. Virtue ethics is a philosophy developed by Aristotle and other ancient Greeks. It is the quest to understand and live a life of moral character. This character-based approach to morality assumes that we acquire virtue through practice by practicing being honest, brave, just, generous, and so on. A person develops an honorable and moral character. According to Aristotle, by honing virtual habits, people will likely make the right choice when faced with ethical challenge.
Update sa kontrata.
Next. Next.
Dan, Mr. Tarente po.
Thank you.
Ah, ibig Ibig sabihin po, yung topic ni Aristotle, binigyang diin niya ang virtue ay practical at ang layunin ng ethics ay maging mabuti, hindi lamang malaman. Kumbaga, hindi lamang natin malaman ito, kundi para tayo ay maging mabuti, nang ibig sabihin ay bigyang katuparan o aksyonan ng lahat ng bagay. Saint Thomas Natural Law. Saint Thomas Aquinas was an Italian Dominican friar and priest who was an immensely influential philosopher, theologian, and jurist in the tradition of scholasticism. He is also known within the latter as the Doctor Angelicus, the Doctor Communis, and the Doctor Universalis. Saint Thomas Aquinas wrote most extensively about natural law. Natural law meaning it is a system of a law based on a close observation of human nature that can be deducted and applied independent of positive law. Sabi ni Aquinas, the light of reason is placed by nature and thus by God in every man to guide him in his acts. Meron tayong tatlong specific norms of natural law. Yung number 1, common to all created reality na meaning preserve and protect life. Number 2, generic to animals, procreation, education of offspring. And number 3, specific to humans, that is reason. Please proceed po kay Mr. Motol.
Good morning, sir. The natural law and its tenets. Next pa. What is natural law? Natural law is a theory in ethics and philosophy that says that human beings possess intrinsic values that govern their reasoning and behavior. So, Natural law and its tenets. The concepts of natural law are ancient, stemming from the times of Plato and Aristotle. This is opposed to the theories that laws are socially constructed and created by people. Examples of natural laws exist in several fields from philosophy to economics.
Next po, Mr. Gabayno or Miss Malapad.
Malapad.
Mapalad, sorry.
Okay po. Next slide po. Happiness as constitutive of moral and cardinal virtues. Through teaching, we implicitly making the connection between morality and happiness is an attempt to restore the connection of happiness to moral ethics of the good. The morality of happiness should be connected to our virtues in doing good what is right and good. So, ibig sabihin po nito ay, sabi nga po kanina ni Miss Adoyo, yung ang moralidad ng kaligayahan ay dapat lagi pong konektado sa kabutihan na ginagawa natin. Yung happiness po ay hindi lang po doon sa kaligayahan na kunwari, example po nito ay yung natamo na po natin yung ating pangarap, naging masaya po tayo. Hindi yun ang basihan ng happiness according kay Aquinas po. Ang kanya ay sinasabi po dito na dapat laging ang kaligayahan natin ay konektado sa kabutihan para sa paggawa natin ng mabuti at kung ano ang tama sa mabuti. Yan lamang po. Next po. At yung happiness po ay merong 4 na principle of cardinal virtues. At ang una po dito ay prudence, concern with the intellect, right reason in an action. Prudence also the guide and the measure for all the moral virtues. Yung prudence daw po ay ito yung gumagabay sa atin sa paghatol ng ating kalooban sa ating tunay na kabutihan. At ang example po nito ay yung checking your bank account before you spend money. Siyempre po, bago tayo po gumastos, titingnan muna po natin yung ating bank account kung meron po ba itong laman o wala. At ang prudence din po ay ito yung patnubay at sukatan doon po sa lahat ng moral virtues. Yan lamang po. Thank you.
Good morning, sir. Ako po magre-report ng fortitude tas justice and temperance. Yung fortitude, remain strong and constant. Give us strength to do it. For example, ang example na lang natin dito is kunwari sa everyday life, may mga challenges na kailangan mong daanan, mga problema na kailangan bigyan ng solusyon. Kailangan mo yung strength, yung moral courage na pinag-aaralan natin, kailangan mo yun para makayanan mo yun sa araw-araw mong pamumuhay. Yun yung sir, yung fortitude. Tapos yung justice, concerned with the will, giving to them what is rightly belong to them. For example lang naman dyan is, kunwari, sa isang bahay malaki, tas yung katulong, kailangan ibigay mo yung karapatan ng katulong na yun, i-treat mo na tao siya. Huwag mo ipapakita na bababa ang tingin mo sa kanya, kundi i-pair mo siya as in parang magkasing parehas lang nakatao kayo sa katayuan ninyo. Hindi yung nasusukat yung yaman sa kung ano meron yung katulong mo. Kailangan i-treat mo siya ng righteousness, yung right, tama dapat. Tapos yung temperance, balance use of the many goods. Kunwari, ang ano dyan yung moderation in all things daw. Kailangan mo i-moderate yung sarili mo. For example, magiinom ka. Dapat yung pag-iinom mo, hindi porke iinom ka, dapat dadamihan mo na. Dapat balance lang. Yung all goods, dapat balance lang siya yun. So pagkain mo, dapat balance lang, umaga, tanghali, tas hapon, hindi na lalampas sa ganun, bawal na lumampas. Parang ibabalance mo yung mga ginagawa mo para do sa, yun yung pinakang ethics na sinasabi po. Ilamon po, sir. Thank you po.
So, meaning
Pero
po, ang human beings po pala alone among God's
pero po
creatures
ay yung akin po
use
yung
reason to lead their lives. Ito po yung ibig sabihin ng natural law. Sa makatwid, ang mga tao ay gumagamit ng katwiran para pumunuan ng kanilang buhay. Yun lang po yung report ng Group 1. Thank you po.
sir, ako po hindi nakapag-report. Opo, akin po yung tenets na report po ni Mutol. Yan po. Natural law and thank you, sir. Nawala po. Yung natural law and its tenets po. Next slide po. Yan. Natural law and its tenets. The concepts of natural law are ancient, stemming from the times of Plato and Aristotle. Ito daw po is nagmula sa panahon ni na Plato at Aristotle. This is opposed to the theories that laws are socially constructed and created by people. And dito daw po is salungat sa teorya na ang batas daw po ay itinayo or binuo ng mga tao. Example of natural law exists in several fields from philosophy to economics. Unlike laws enacted by government to address specific needs or behaviors, natural law is universal, applying to everyone everywhere in the same way. For example, natural law assumes that everyone believes killing another person is wrong and that punishment for killing another person is right. Yun lang po, sir. Thank you.
Wala po, sir.
Showing moral, wait lang sir, moral standard sir.
Showing moral standard, sir.
Bakit? Sir? Malbog to. Bakit malbog?
Dun po kasi, sir, pinapakita yung behavior po sa virtue.
Sir, showing moral standard po. Kasi sir, kung ang ang pipiliin po natin ay yung setting moral standard, ibig sabihin po, isiniset lang po natin siya without taking an action po. While yung showing moral standard po, napapakita po natin siya or na-i-act out po natin. Kaya po na maaari po siyang ma-consider na virtue po.
Sir, paulit po. Sir, pwede po bang sabi? Yung, yung natural, yung natural po, sabi ni Saint Thomas Aquinas, parang yun po yung natural law, yung galing kay God na mga batas po na dapat nating i-practice. Yun po yung reason to lead their lives.
Sir, ako po. Sir, yung parang natural law, sir, ay ina-apply sa lahat ng tao dito sa buong nakatira sa earth, sir. For example, sir, kunwari may pinatay na tao, siyempre, ang tingnan ng lahat ng tao doon, mali, sir, yun. Yun yung natural law, sir. Parang ganun, sir.
Sir, opo. Sir, yung natural law, sir, yung karapatang pantao o yung human law ay tumutukoy din sa payak na mga karapatan at mga kalayaang nararapat na matanggap ng lahat ng tao. Kabilang sa karapatan ng mga kalayaan na karaniwan iniisip bilang mga karapatang pantao ang mga karapatan sibil at pampulitika tulad ng karapatang mamuhay at kalayaan. Sir, ang likas na batas ng moral na natural ay ang kakayaan natin na utusan ng ating sarili na tuparin ang mga ng kataas-taasan para sa maayos na pamumuhay para sa kabutihan ng panlahat. Parang ganun, sir. Sir? Sir, parang sir yung natural law, sir yung ano, siya yung ang tawag dito, yung kung ano yung pinatupad ng batas is dapat mong sundin. Dapat mong sundin para wala tuloy ako. Lang, sir.
Sir, ako daw po, try po. Sir, yung example po niyan, sir, pag po, kunyari, may pinatay po tayong tao, di ba sa tingin po ng lahat, mali yun. Pero kapag po, nagbigay ka ng punishment or, kunyari, pinunishment mo yun, nagpatay ka ng, pinatay mo yung isang tao na yun para maghigante. Sa tingin po ng tao ay yun po itama. Parang ganun po.
Sir, according to Aristotle, sabi na, it's about virtue and habit. Parang ito like said, according sa man's law, parang ang virtue po ay na sa ginagawa ng tao, while I think so much more as virtue, parang ito, baga, wala pa ang tao sa mundo. Oh my God, parang ganun. Parang yung kay, or yung kay Aristotle po, parang sinusunod po na tao kung ano yung virtue as a habit, nakadepende sa man's law kung anong gusto na lang gawin, and yung happiness po. Then yung kay St. Thomas naman po, yun po yung law ng natural law is from God. Yung meron na po siya before mag-exist yung tao. Parang natural law, yung talagang law na hindi mo na iisipin. Parang, ano ba yun? Yung law na talagang andon, common sense na po, yun po yung tama. Parang according po sa tao yung kay Aristotle, parang man's law. Natural law, sir.
Kami po, sir.
Sige po, sir. Salamat po.
Thank you po.
Nakapag-attendance sa sir? Sige po, sir.
Mag-out po. Mag-leave. Thank you, sir. Thank you po, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.